this is an iHeart podcast.
Hey, if you're with Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, you are overpaying for wireless, period. You're paying a massive premium for what you think is superior 5G service. Pure Talk, my wireless company, a veteran-owned company, they use the same 5G network. They use the same exact cell towers as the big carriers, but they don't charge you for any of the garbage. You can get unlimited talk and text and plenty of data for just $25 a month. Just go to puretalk.com/Sean, S-E-A-N, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Make the switch to Pure Talk today. All right, thank you, Scott Shannon, and thanks to all of you for being with us. News you'll never get from the state-run legacy media mob. Write down our toll-free telephone number. If you'd like to be a part of the program, it's 800-941-SEAN. If you'd like to join us, we got a lot going on today. 5 days from now, it will be the 6-month mark that Donald Trump has been president. 6 months. And I get that every party is a coalition party, et cetera, but there's one thing that's really undeniable here. And that is, this is by far the most consequential, transformational 6-month period of any new president by far in the modern era. I don't know. I think you can even, maybe FDR would be an exception. Roosevelt would be the exception, but I don't really think so. I mean, and everything that is now happening is big. Now we expect the president, by the way, is going to be talking energy independence. He did a gaggle. Well, I liked it so much. I think we're going to play a part of it coming up later in the program. We haven't fully decided yet. Well, we are thinking about it, but it was really, he talked about a wide variety of topics. Also, we have Newt Gingrich today. We'll talk about this issue, considering he's the great historian and professor about Donald Trump's presidency. We have James Comer on the autopen scandal. And what I think is even more interesting than that, because it was Joe Biden's chief of staff who gave the final approval on Joe's autopen, and Joe just set up parameters for which they can offer clemency and pardons, and the ordering of the autopen was by the chief of staff. That seems to me like it would probably invalidate a lot of these pardons and commutations. We'll check in with James Comer on that issue. We'll get an update. And also we have an update on the weaponization of our federal government, which this goes back 10 years, from Russia to FISA abuse. Everybody was warned not to use Hillary Clinton's dirty Russian disinformation dossier before they used it to ruin Carter Page's life. Carter Page has been on this program many times. His life was ruined as a result of it. It turned out Carter Page was a patriot to this country, and that whenever he traveled abroad, he would come back and tell our 3-letter agencies everything that he learned and cooperated as a patriot with his country. And this is the thanks that he gets. And it's ironic that all the people that were warned not to use the Russian disinformation dossier and as the basis of these FISA applications, years later, knowing what we know now, we would never have signed it. James Comey signed 3 of the 4 of them, but he was warned in both July of 2016 and August of 2016 not to use it because it's political information and it's unverified and then unverifiable. And by December of 2016, they had completely debunked the dossier, and Christopher Steele's let go. And yet he still continued to use that dossier that they knew was bogus and phony. And that was really the Russian disinformation. But everything in between, that would include the 51 former intel agents that had no knowledge of Hunter Biden's very real laptop, all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Not one of the 51 people ever, not one time, examined the laptop. They knew nothing about the laptop except Wink and Tony Blinken wanted a talking point for Joe Biden going into a presidential debate with Donald Trump. At what point do we not realize that there is something called a deep state, and these are political operatives in high positions of power that were trying to put cinder blocks on the scales of our elections? And then you could take it a step further, the double standard when it comes to top secret classified materials, Hillary Clinton's servers and bleach bit and hammers and devices and SIM cards removed. Nothing happened. No reasonable prosecutor would prosecute, according to Mr. Higher Honor himself, was now under investigation. James Comey. And, you know, what was Brennan's involvement in all of this? What was Clapper's involvement in all of this? This is now going to become, I think, a massive investigation and a grand conspiracy investigation that apparently has been opened weeks ago by Kash Patel, the FBI director, which I think is more than overdue. Because if there are people that have been operating in ways that you abuse their power to undermine our elections, that would be something that we need to know about and put in place measures so that it can never happen again. I mean, it's so ironic when you listen to radical leftist Democrats because they're out there, you know, scared to death. I mean, liberals are floating this idea that Donald Trump is going to tamper with or cancel the midterm elections. You have former MSDNC host Joy Reid and James Carville suggesting in recent weeks that the 2026 midterms will be tampered with or outright canceled by Donald Trump. And they're appearing during an appearance on the Jim Acosta show. Did you know Jim Acosta had a show, Linda? I didn't know Jim Acosta. I thought he got fired by fake news CNN or let go or something or quit. I don't know what he did. Nobody cared about what, you know, fake news Acosta has to say anyway. But anyway, Carville told him that he thinks there's a major risk of Trump tampering. They're just making this stuff up as they go along. And you know, I'm just watching the radical left, and I'll tell you, it is the best thing that Republicans have going for them, as Donald Trump has one big issue after another that he's willing to take on and tackle that previous presidents would never take on, never tackle, never go near for fear that they might fail. But Donald Trump has taken on all of it, and he's proven to be successful. And we're all going to be better off because of it. The economy is going to grow. You know, we see what happened at the border. We're seeing, you know, criminal immigrants, illegal, unvetted Harris Biden illegals and Mayorkas illegals being thrown out every single day. You know, and then what are Democrats doing? Democratic leaders in the House, they're struggling about whether or not they should, you know, support Mamdani. You know, the guy, you know, global Antifada himself. You know, Hakeem Jeffries is going to meet with. What else does Hakeem Jeffries need to know about this guy that he's going to give him the time of day? And this is the interesting part of this, is the Democratic leadership is scared to death of Zoran Mamdani. They're scared to death of AOC. They're scared to death of the Squad. They're scared to death of Jasmine Crockett. They're scared to death of Grandpa Bernie, the radical socialist he is. I mean, in the case of Mamdani, you're looking at Marxist Mamdani because it's basically to each according to their need, from each according to their ability. Pocahontas is another one. And basically the leadership is non-existent. Chuck Schumer is minority leader in name only. Hakeem Jeffries is minority leader in name only. And they are literally held hostage or they're just complicit and agree with this, because this is madness where they're taking the party. Even Rombo Deadfish admits that his party is less popular than Elon Musk in a scathing critique. You know, Obama pushing Democrats to toughen up. Good luck with this, by the way. He's imploring Democrats to toughen up at a private fundraiser in New Jersey at his party's attempts to rebuild their coalition under Donald Trump's second term. I think it's going to require a little bit of less navel gazing and a little less whining and being in fetal positions. And it's going to require Democrats to just toughen up, he said. Okay, this is Democrats toughening up, because now the Democratic leaders in the House have, you know, they're fighting their radical base. And there's one, you know, they're trying to quell one impeachment push after another by rank and file radicals that control their party. And during a 6-week stretch during this year so far, House Democrats twice were confronted with impeachment votes forced by their own rank and file members that had zero chance of passing. And by the way, this ought to be a canary in the coal mine if you don't think that the 2026 elections are going to matter. Now, if you like the direction of where the country is headed under Donald Trump, again, we're We're 5 days away. It'll be 6 months into Trump's presidency, this being his second term. It's going to be 6 months. And, you know, you think a little bit more than a year ago, an assassin's bullet came within a millimeter of taking President Trump's life. 1 millimeter. I mean, that's how close that was, and there wouldn't be any Donald Trump. I remember watching it live. I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly the moment this happened. I remember when he stood up, wondering if he would just go crashing down again when I saw the blood all over his face. And I was feverishly texting people that I knew were around him at the time that were there. And not long thereafter, I got word that he was okay. And then, of course, I had breakfast the next morning, one morning with Steve Witkoff, and then the incident in Trump International took place. And I left breakfast with him. An hour later, I got a phone call. You're not going to believe this. They just tried to kill the president again. And, the Secret Service were now discovering they had 10 days notice, and they didn't do anything about it. They didn't share the information with local law enforcement, which they should have. And there needs to be institutional reform. And then we were lied to about a sloped roof that wasn't sloped. But with all that saying, look at what has happened in 6 months. Reflect, be grateful for what has happened. And, not only did you ensure that the president win all 7 swing states and win the popular vote, but his policies and his actions, one is bigger than the next. I mean, we now see, after 12, 20 million people, whatever the number is, we don't even know the number with gotaways, but now our border is secure. Now they're in the process of deporting criminal illegals, murderers, rapists, other violent criminals, cartel members, gang members, drug dealers. We have Iranian assassination squads in the country. We have known terrorists in the country. Finding them all is going to be like finding needles in haystacks, but they're working hard. I have news today that 1,300 new people were apprehended. And, look what the president has done with inflation. Look at the largest tax cut in American history. Look at the fact that working men and women are the biggest beneficiaries of this tax cut. I mean, the fact that we have no tax on tips and overtime, helping older Americans out with Social Security, but, at least beginning the effort to codify. The House in the Senate is actually set for a procedural vote as early as today to codify DOGE cuts into reality. That's a really good thing. I know Democrats are out there lying about Medicaid. It's just not true. If Republicans didn't deal with this entitlement, it would have ballooned by $1.5 trillion. That would be insolvency. Under the new law, Medicaid remains on track to spend $450 billion more than we're spending now, a 7% increase, in spite of Democrats claiming that there are major cuts taking place. No, Republicans are not stripping coverage from vulnerable groups that the entitlement was created to serve: pregnant women, the blind, the disabled, the elderly, and the like. And yet, but they are projecting that 1.4 million illegal immigrants are beneficiaries of Medicaid, and that 4.8 able-bodied people now are going to be subject to community engagement requirements. There ought to be some type of work or volunteer requirement. They put that in place. Federal law bars Medicaid from covering illegal immigrants, but for years states have used these workarounds to do it. House Republicans are showcasing they can take control of this stuff. But if you actually look at all the success, not just at the border, not just at the economy, not just with, taking care of working men and women, we're dealing with many of the messes that were left behind by the last administration. Iran is off the table as a possible nuclear threat. The president is working as hard as humanly possible. Putin couldn't be negotiated with. Now he's getting tougher. Okay, he gave him a chance. They gave Iran a chance. But we have, so much more work to do. What the president's doing with energy. He's in Pennsylvania today talking about energy. What the president is doing, $10 trillion in commitments. There's a story out today that, Apple is now going to spend another $500 million investment in a U.S. mine for rare earths. We're going to have manufacturing for automobiles, pharmaceuticals, semiconductor chips, rare earths, magnets, things that we've been far too dependent on other countries for. And the world, we're going to rebuild our military. We're going to rebuild the next generation of weaponry. Every one of these things is a big deal.
Time for a sofa upgrade? Visit WashableSofas.com and discover Anabay, where designer style meets budget-friendly prices, with sofas starting at $699. Anabay brings you the ultimate in furniture innovation with a modular design that allows you to rearrange your space effortlessly. Perfect for both small and large spaces, Anabay is the only machine-washable sofa inside and out. Say goodbye to stains and messes with liquid and stain-resistant fabrics that make cleaning easy. Liquid simply slides right off. Designed for custom comfort, our high-resilience foam lets you choose between a sink-in feel or a supportive memory foam blend. Plus, our pet-friendly, stain-resistant fabrics ensure your sofa stays beautiful for years. Don't compromise quality for price. Visit WashableSofas.com to upgrade your living space today with no-risk returns and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get up to 60% off plus free shipping and free returns. Shop now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
So many people living with everyday pain think they just are stuck with it, and it is what it is. It doesn't have to be that way. Let me tell you about David and his Relief Factor story. After a devastating accident, David wasn't expected to live, let alone walk again. For 5 years, pain became his constant companion. It was dictating his entire life. It was limiting his ability to work, but David fought back. And now, thanks to Relief Factor, guess what? He's working again. He's taking back control of his life. Pain no longer calls the shots. Anyway, if you are living with aches and pains, please see how Relief Factor, a daily drug-free supplement, could help you feel and live better every single day of your life. Now give their 3-week quick start a try. It's $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. And in a few weeks, even days, feel the difference of Relief Factor and how it can improve your life. You don't have to be stuck living with pain. Just go to relieffactor.com or just call toll free. It's 1-800-4-RELIEF. That's 1-800-4-RELIEF today. Hey, if you're with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, you are overpaying for wireless, period, end of sentence. You're paying for thousands of retail stores that you're never going to go to. You're paying for unnecessary perks that you'll never use. But guess what? My cell phone provider, Pure Talk, they use the same 5G network, the same cell towers. The only difference? They don't charge you for any of the garbage. Instead, Pure Talk will give you unlimited talk, unlimited text, plenty of data, $25 a month. That's real money in your pocket for the exact same service. And guess what? You can keep your phone and your phone number. Just go to puretalk.com/Sean, S-E-A-N. You will save an additional 50% off your first month. You can make the switch. It's simple, it's fast, it's easy. That's puretalk.com/Sean, S-E-A-N. Make the switch to Pure Talk. Wireless, by Americans, for Americans. All right, 25 till the top of the hour, 800-941-SEAN, a number. You want to be a part of the program. Look, small business is the backbone of America. Small business, you provide a service, jobs to your neighbors. You lift up your community. You sponsor the Little League team. You care about your customers. You get involved in your community. But when it comes to the services required to run your business, big tech, well, they kind of give you second-rate treatment. And I'm talking about the big carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. You'll wait on hold for hours. We've all experienced that, only to talk to a C team from overseas, and you can't even understand you. And Pure Talk, my wireless company, a veteran-owned company, champion small business. And what they offer small business is white glove service with your own dedicated account representative from the U.S. You get the same exact cell tower, same 5G network as the big carriers. And, best of all, businesses like yours are saving a fortune every month. The average family that switches to Pure Talk is saving over $1,000 a year for the exact same service. Well, for companies, there's a landscape company in Kansas City. They have 12 lines. They cut their bill from $757 a month to $387 a month. That's almost 50% off. Or An appraisal company in Washington with 11 lines cut their bill from $507 to $255 a month. And look, Pure Talk Business could save you 50% on your bill. You deserve better. And Pure Talk provides the choice, the option that you never had before. The switch is simple, fast, and easy. You dial pound 250, say the keyword save now, pound 250, keyword save now. Make the switch to the carrier that will make you a priority and offer you concierge service. I just told you about Adam Schiff. Very interesting what's happening with him. Linda, correct me if I'm wrong. He got the preemptive pardon. I thought it was for other reasons, but maybe this mortgage issue is the reason. I don't know yet. We're going to do a deep dive into it. We'll get the answers. As we speak, the president is gathering CEOs for this unprecedented faith economy meeting to renew U.S. spirituality, financial business and charitable work. Also the president meeting on energy in Pennsylvania as we speak, and AI and how that's connected to it, which I'm really not that sure about. Anyway, the president also allocating $40 million to create a national garden of American heroes featuring statues of 250 iconic figures as a patriotic counter to monumental removals that have taken place around the country. And, you know, a planned opening for the end of his presidency and a final location to be determined. That's good. We've got a lot of progress going on. We'll get into that in a second. Mike Waltz sitting through this ridiculous Senate hearing. It's just such a waste of time. And, you know, we're watching a lot of new news being created every single day, every minute, every hour of every day. And a lot of it's very, very good news. And this is the, you know, we're almost at the 6-month mark of the Trump presidency. Now, the Supreme Court, on top of every other success, allows the Trump administration's mass firings at the Department of Education. Why is this important? It's important if you care about your kids' education. Well, unless you're in my free state of Florida, they've been rated 1 or 2 in the country in terms of the top public schools in America. And it's a state with very low taxes. How is that possible? And all these states that spend massive amounts of money per capita, per student on education, you know, how is it that, you know, we spend more per capita, per student on education as a country, and we come in 37th in terms of math proficiency, reading proficiency, or 40th, depending on what the year is? It's insane. The Department of Education has failed. This unholy alliance between teachers' unions and the Democratic Party has been a disaster. And President Trump is breaking this stranglehold, with the Supreme Court agreeing yesterday to pause a lower court order that required the Department of Education to reinstate nearly 1,400 employees who'd been laid off, while proceedings over the Trump administration's effort to dismantle the agency to continue. And they granted a request from the Trump administration to lift the injunction issued by a U.S. district judge, which blocked the mass layoffs at the Department of Education. Now, you can't fail more spectacularly. You know, in a best case scenario, you're looking at institutionalized mediocrity overall. In a worst case scenario, it is institutionalized failure. And let me tell you what education is. Education is a ladder. It's the ladder to success. It's the ladder to the American dream. It's a ladder to, you know, becoming financially independent. It's a ladder to not being dependent on government. It's a ladder that will allow you to aspire and achieve that dream. What does the average person want? We're all the same. I think most people want a nice house, decent house in a safe neighborhood with good schools for their kids. They want a nice car to drive. You know, they want a big screen TV. They want to be able to go out to eat on a weekend with their family, not worry what the cost is going to be occasionally, not even every weekend. You know, and they want to put away money for their retirement, maybe money that they can pass on to future generations. It's not complicated. This is why the president's economic plan is so profound. This is why $10 trillion in committed investments in manufacturing actually matter. And there were so many predictions of doom and gloom, you know, by the economic sector and Democrats. Well, I looked at the news today in the Wall Street Journal. America's biggest bank said today that the U.S. economy showed signs of resilience despite escalating threats on global trade, a sign that American corporations and consumers are still charging ahead. Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase, reported better than expected results for the second quarter and showed few signs of slowing down, with all the bank's underlying businesses increasing revenue and profit. The outlook for the U.S. economy has improved as President Trump has delayed and modified his planned tariffs. No, he's making trade deals with countries like Vietnam and Great Britain and even China, and other countries are in the works as well. And Jamie Dimon, who's repeatedly warned that there's widespread complacency among investors about the risk to the economy, acknowledged that there had been positive developments and his bank's economists have dropped their call for a recession. Oh, nice of him to jump on board. There was the doom and gloom crowd. I mentioned earlier, I'll talk more about it later. Apple now backing President Trump's, plan to acquire rare earth minerals. They're investing $500 million on top of the $500 million they're investing in Texas so that we manufacture our phones here. I mean, $10 trillion in investment coupled with, what is incalculable impact on our economy. We can be an energy rich country. This is what the president is talking about in Pennsylvania, even as we speak. As a matter of fact, let's dip into it really quick here. Here's what the president's saying.
$16 trillion. There's never been anything like that in history. You can go for years and they didn't have numbers like that. And if you look at the last administration, you had negative numbers. You didn't have positive numbers. You're going in the wrong direction. But we have the hottest country, and we're going to keep it that way. Today's commitments are ensuring that the future is going to be designed, built, and made right here in Pennsylvania and right here in Pittsburgh, and I have to say right here in the United States of America.
Now, let me explain what the president is talking about here. That is a $90 billion AI and energy investment just for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's pretty amazing. By the way, even CBS News has had to admit that millions of car buyers in the U.S. are going to get tax relief thanks to this, big, beautiful bill that was signed into law on July 4th by the president. And then there's the myth that somehow if you cut taxes, that's going to hurt the economy. No, it doesn't hurt the economy. The reality is revenues increase. Well, they're increasing for a lot of reasons. Number one, people are going to have opportunities for higher paying career jobs when $10 trillion in manufacturing is unleashed. With energy being unleashed, that's other high paying career jobs for Americans. By deporting criminal illegals in this country, that means less competition for these high-paying career jobs. Even the CBO is now forecasting that Trump's tariffs will generate a massive additional $3 trillion in federal revenue over the next coming years, which they didn't want to factor in before. Now, the president put out today on Truth, the Fed should cut rates by 3 points. We have very low inflation. That's $1 trillion a year that would be saved. There is no reason except for pure political purposes that Jerome Powell is refusing to see even the reality that Jamie Dimon and other critics of the president's economic plan have been pointing out. The Fed chair, Trump called him a knucklehead, says interest rates should be below 1%. All right, maybe not that low, but instead of 7%, how about we go down to 3.5%? I mean, if you're looking at the one area in our economy that is lagging, the one area, it's in home construction, and people are not going to give up their 2.93, 3.5%, 4% 30-year fixed rate mortgage and move to a different home, which they'd like to do, many of them. If you're going to get a mortgage at 7%, then you're paying like twice the amount. Bureau of Labor Statistics, inflation just ticked slightly higher in June, but nothing to be concerned about. But America has power to lead the AI revolution. That's what the president is talking about in Pennsylvania, even right now as we speak, and to leverage natural gas for powering the next tech revolution, which is critical. He's thinking ahead. We hear energy rich countries. Why can't America be an energy rich country? By the way, Tom Cotton has introduced legislation to end birthright citizenship, which I think is a good idea. Went over all the incidents yesterday, all over the country, a 700% increase in attacks against ICE agents. You have a pro-democratic group we discovered, an activist group raising more than $750,000 for mobile response teams to confront ICE during raids. All these people need to be arrested. All of them. Because that's called obstruction of justice. And by the way, that includes, monies being put aside in New York by Kathy Hochul. I mean, why New York continues to vote for her, I really don't know. Makes no sense. Or the mayor of Los Angeles, we got to give money to, people that Donald Trump is rounding. He's enforcing the law. These ICE roundups, just came out today. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested 1,361 illegals in the Houston area in June, including individuals previously convicted of, listen closely, hijacking an airplane, homicide, sexual assault, and much more. Again, I repeat myself, it's not a matter of if, it's when America gets attacked because they've allowed known terrorists in the country, but also murderers, rapists, other violent criminals, cartel members, gang members, drug dealers, and this is now the cause of Democrats. The majority of illegals in this country are currently being held by ICE are criminals. This, according to ICE data, NBC News reporting, there's been a wave of recent media reports that now claim over 70% of illegals who recently have been arrested by ICE are not criminals. In fact, according to the most recent data, the opposite is true. That, close to 60% of illegals have either been convicted of crimes or face pending criminal charges. Whoopsie daisy. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good, political story. Feds are charging 2 anti-ICE activists with the shooting attack at a Colorado immigration detention facility. You have one ICE employee brought to an emergency room after alleged doxing in California. Is anyone going to ask, Gavin Newsom from the United Socialist Utopia of California about this? Gavin thinks he's going to run for president. You think some of the ads that are going to be run are going to be victims of the illegal immigrants that have been granted sanctuary state status, that have murdered people and raped people and committed violent crimes against people? You think those are going to be ads if, in fact, that he decides to go down this road? It seems like he's thinking about it, because it's obvious that, it's a pretty good sign if you're out there going to South Carolina the way he did. I don't think he went there for the nice weather in the summer. It gets pretty hot in South Carolina in the summer. But I mean, those are all things he's going to have to answer for. We're going to get into the latest autopen admission. I mean, Joe Biden basically, defended his last minute pardons to the New York Times of all places. It should have been a layup interview, but he even said, he had originally claimed he made every decision himself when it came to the pardon and commutations. But then he said he didn't explicitly agree to each and every clemency winner. He said, we're talking about a lot of people, which is actually a big part of it. The warrants commuted the sentences of 4,000 inmates in total, including child killers and several mass murderers on death row. But now we're finding out that, he laid out criteria and that it was his chief of staff. We'll get into that later with our friend James Comer is going to be on the program. And by the way, what the president is now doing when it comes to Vladimir Putin, he's given the guy every opportunity for peace, and he's fed up. And he's given him 50 days, a deadline, peace or face economic ruin. Obviously angry that after every opportunity has been given to Vladimir, that he's chosen not to take it. 85 U.S. senators are now signing on to a sanctions bill, and there will be massive tariffs put on any country that buys cheap energy from Vladimir Putin and Russia. And Trump's decision to spend the billions worth of weapons. Now, he's selling the weapons to NATO. NATO can then decide to give it to Ukraine. Then we're not fighting a proxy war anymore, and we're not bankrupting our country in the meantime. However, it is standing up to this unbridled, evil aggression of Putin, even targeting innocent civilians. So I think it's past time now. He's been given every opportunity in the world to join the free world and get more territory and get concessions. But playing nice with Putin has proved to be futile. So you go to plan B. What's plan B? Get tough. Same thing he did with Iran.
This is an iHeart podcast.